Hello, welcome back. The hospital room was quiet and dim, but the heaviness in the air made every second feel longer. Jimmy Swaggart lay still in his hospital bed, looking as though life itself was slipping quietly from him. Machines hummed softly. Beside him, their beeping the only sign that time hadn't stopped. Frances sat at his side, holding his hand tightly with both of hers, her heart heavy with unspoken fear. She had spent a lifetime with him, sharing in all the highs and lows. And now she could sense something deeper than just illness resting on his shoulders. It was as if Jimmy had something more to say, something he had carried for years. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of everything that hadn't been said. She waited, hoping he would speak. Jimmy's breathing was shallow and his face looked worn but calm, like someone who had finally made peace with his past. Still, Frances could feel that inside. He was wrestling with something unfinished. She leaned closer, brushing his forehead gently, trying to give comfort without words. The weight in her heart grew. It wasn't just the fear of losing him, it was the fear that he would leave still carrying a secret. She whispered softly, giving him space to speak if he needed to. Then a tear slid down Jimmy's cheek and she knew the moment had come. After what felt like forever, Jimmy turned his head slowly toward her. His eyes, tired and filled with sorrow, met hers, and in a broken, trembling voice, he confessed. He had carried a burden alone for years, a truth he had never spoken, not even to her. He told her about a woman from long ago, a mistake from the early days of his ministry. He had been young and caught up in pride. It had been brief. But later the woman had written to him, saying she had a child and that child was his. He had never followed up. He had never met the boy. He convinced himself it wasn't true and buried it as the ministry grew. But he had never stopped thinking about it. He had kept it from Frances all this time. Not to hurt her, but because he was afraid. Now, at the edge of death, he couldn't carry it anymore. Frances sat frozen, her heart cracking with every word. The man she loved, the man she believed had shared everything with her, had held back something so big for so long. But even through her pain, she didn't let go of his hand. She looked at him, eyes filled with tears, not just of heartbreak, but of something more profound, a love that knew how to stay even when it hurt. She asked softly why he hadn't told her before. His answer was simple and raw. He had been scared of losing her, of losing the life they had built. But now he realized he hadn't been protecting her, he had only protected himself. Jimmy's voice was barely there, but it came from the deepest part of his soul. He told her she had given him everything and he had responded with a half-truth. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He just needed her to know who he really was before it was too late. Frances listened, her grip softening, her heart breaking but still full of love. She looked at him not as the preacher or the public figure, but as the man she had lived beside for a lifetime. And then, with a deep breath and aching tenderness, she leaned in and embraced him. It wasn't just a hug, it was a silent promise that she still loved him, broken places and all. Jimmy leaned into her, his tears falling freely now. There were no more lies, no more hiding, just the truth laid bare between them. And for the first time in years, he felt peace. The burden he had carried for decades had finally been lifted. And Frances hadn't walked away, she stayed. As the final moments passed, Jimmy whispered his last words, a thank you for her love. Even after everything, she replied with just one word, always. And then he slipped away, quietly, finally at rest. Weeks later, Frances still carried the pain of losing him, but she also carried his truth. She knew his confession hadn't been meant just for her, it was something that needed to be shared. So one day, with quiet resolve, she sat down and wrote a letter to the ministry's supporters. She told the story not out of anger or shame, but out of honesty. She told them about Jimmy's hidden past, about the child he never knew, and about the secret he finally revealed in his last hours. She reminded them that Jimmy was human and that even in his failures, he found the courage to be truthful. At the end, her words traveled far, stirring many emotions: shock, sorrow, compassion, but most of all, people responded to the truth. Frances didn't tell the world to protect a legacy, she told the world because truth matters. Even when it's late, even the strongest people carry hidden wounds. And sometimes healing only begins when we stop pretending. Jimmy's story didn't end in silence, it ended with honesty, and Frances made sure that truth would live on.